Good evening, guys. Give me just a second. I'm sharing a link in a couple groups real quick. Good evening, guys. Give me just a second. I'm sharing a link in a couple groups. All right, I'm back. Sorry about that. So, I figured we'd do a fun topic tonight. Not that the last stream I did wasn't fun. I want something that's a little bit more educational now. What are ritual tools and why you create your own? This is actually something that I don't hear many people talking about. They talk about using ritual tools. They talk about, and when I say ritual tools, I'm including tarot decks, rune cards, rune stones. Their Book of Shadows is a ritual tool. Seagulls, all the fun stuff that we like to use. I mean, our ceremonial robes are ritual tools. I was going to have a lot more fun with this, but apparently I just can't seem to stream my, or share my Photoshop. It'll show it, but it won't show the project I have in there. I've had a couple projects in there. I was going to show you how to actually create your own tarot cards, which I'm still going to do. I'm just going to use XSplit and make 2 separate videos on how to create your own alphabet, rune cards, and tarot cards. A couple of fun projects coming up. But for now, we'll just talk about it. Like I said, every ritual tool has a purpose. I kind of covered this a little bit in the last video I did, but I didn't get into it. Most people think, like our athames or our swords. We have to have them, but all they really are is a channel object, a focal point to help us reach a state of gnosis. Actually, there's something I want to look up. I think I got it transferred over, probably not knowing me, but I want to read something that I wrote a while back. Really, there's only a quote in there I want, but I'm sure I'll catch hell of a quote. Just because who it's by, but it still has a purpose. It helps you understand something a little bit better. Magical rope, not finished. Wait. Another thing, guys, for those that actually are friends with me on Facebook, you guys can go into my notes. I've got stuff in my notes on here on stuff. But it's, since you can't really sort things out, it's mixed in with, my cult stuff's mixed in with poetry, which might not be suitable for some people. And some of it would be, but, it's a mixture of a bunch of stuff. I'm hoping I've got it in here. This is a drawback of my website being down. I'm going to have to recreate, start over from the beginning. A lot of my stuff is published there. Magical sword. Probably the most profound contemplation, this also applies to the dagger, guys. Contemplation on a magical sword as a ritual weapon in a magical philosophical sense once again comes from Aleister Crowley. And I know people are going to shun that, but just hear me out before you make your judgment calls. The magic sword is the analytical faculty directed against any demon attack. A demon attacks complicitly. Only the simple can withstand the sword. As we are below the abyss, the weapon is the entirely destructive. It drives Satan against Satan. It is only in the lower forms of magic, the purely human form, the sword has become so important a weapon. A dagger should be sufficient. Now, this is the key part right here, guys. Most important part. A dagger should be sufficient, but the mind of man is normally so important to him that the sword is actually the largest of weapons. Happy is he who can make the dagger suffice. How this should be understood. Why does Crowley praise the magician who does not need a sword, calling him or her happy? Let's have a look more at what he has to say first. The sword, necessary as it is to the beginner, is but a crude weapon. Its function is to keep off the enemy, to force a passage through them, and though it must be worn to gain admission to the palace, it cannot be worn at the managed feast. One might say that the pentacle is the bread of life, and the sword the knife which cuts it up. One must have ideas, but one must criticize them. The sword, too, is that weapon with which one strikes terror into the demons and dominates them. One must keep the ego lord of impression. One must not allow the circle to be broken by the demon. One must not allow any one idea to carry one away. It will be seen how very elementary and false all this is, but for the beginner it is necessary. This is important too. All the ritual tools, for the beginner, yes, they are necessary. In all dealings with demons, any spirit actually is what sword is perfect with. The point of the sword is to keep down words, and it should not be used for invocations, as taught in certain schools of magic. If the sword is raised towards the crown, it is no longer really a sword. The crown cannot be divided. Certainly the sword should not be lifted. The sword may, however, be clasped in both hands and kept steady and erect, symbolizing that thought has become one with a single aspiration and burnt up like a flame. This flame is the Shen, the rock alien, not the mere rock atom, the divine, and not the human conscience. The magician cannot wield the sword unless the crown is on his or head. Those magicians who attempt to make the sword the soul, even the principal weapon, have only destroyed themselves. Not by the destruction of combination, but by destruction of division, weakness overcomes strength. The mind must be broken up into a form of insanity before it can be transcended. The sword, therefore, is a critical authority. With its help, the magician can get a grip on one's feelings that distort one's perceptions and hide the nature of things. Needing to use it means being susceptible to the danger of self-deception and insanity, because it is the instinctive confidence of the cup is infused. There will be dangerous discord within the magician, but the sword is also an instrument of thought control and preciseness, and represents the scientific idea and emotional nature objective. Aleister Crowley, hence, every idea must be analyzed by the sword, hence, too, there must only be a single thought in the mind of the person meditating. One now may go on to consider the use of the sword in purifying emotions into perception. It was the function of the cup to interpret the perceptions by tenderness, The sword freed the perception from the web of emotion. The perception are meaningless in themselves, but the emotions are worse. Their victims into supposing them significant and true. Every emotion is an obsession. That most horribly blaspheming is the attribute emotion to God in the microcosm, or the pure soul in the, to God in the macrocosm, or the pure soul in the microcosm. Even in the instruments themselves, their physical qualities such as expansion and contraction, which may be called in a way the roots of pleasure and pain, cause air. Make a thermometer and the glass is so excited by the necessary fusion year by year for 30 years afterwards or more, the highest mercury will continue to alter. How much more so then with plastic, a matter as the mind? There is no emotion which does not leave a mark on the mind, and all marks are bad marks. Hope and fear are only opposite phases of a single emotion. Both are incompatible with the purity of the soul. With passion of man, the case is somewhat different, as they function of his or her own will. They need to be disciplined, not suppressed. But emotion is impressed from without. It is an evasion of the circle. Crowley admonishings, just like those of every shaman, point out again and again that the mind should never be our master, but rather our servant. But this is not meant to be destroyed. Even the servant has an important and vital function, because without it, the door would be wide open for self-deception, paranoia, and megalomania. The sword corresponds to the element of air in its characteristics that represents thought, communication, language, and the rational mind. It can be of any shape or form. The handle is usually made of wood, coated set with copper, although solid copper is sometimes used as well. There's usually a copper ball disc at the pommel of the handle. The hilt is made of two crescent moons that represent its waxing and waning phase. In between those round discs are attached. Together, the three disc balls form an equilateral triangle. Crowley mentions that some magicians make the three balls out of lead, pewter, and gold. The crescent moons then would be made out of silver and the handle filled with mercury, turning the sword into a symbol of planets. But he went on to say that this usually is just a wild fantasy that never followed through with. The blade of the sword is usually made of stainless steel and should be straight and point and sharp all the way to the hilt. If we look at the symbolism of the metal correspondence, it clearly tells us that this is a weapon that merges the principle of Mars and Venus, Crowley wrote. Those two planets are male and female and thus reflect the wand and cup, through in which though in a much lower sense. The hilt is of Venus, for love is the motive of his ruthless analysis. If we are not so, the sword would be a black magical weapon. The magician etches or carves a glyphs, symbols, or god names into the blade. The sigil of the magical name can be used, for example, and Crowley suggested etching the formula Agila by using vitriol. The sword will only be used for evocation, demonic action. But even in this case, it always a weapon of last resort. Just imagine in the practical sense, if the demon in the triangle threatens the stability of the circle, the sword, the intellectual rational mind is called for. It is not only used to drive back or destroy the demon if necessary, but if we think back on our matter of the paradigm shifting, the magician can also use it as a last resort to prevent possible possession by shifting to the paradigm of magic disbelief. And the declaration, the entire operation as to be nothing more but superstitious nonsense. Of course, such an operation not only has to be learned, but is also accompanied by a great deal of danger because it violates the magician's symbol logic by practically violating the entire magical operation, which could lead to serious negative conditioning every time one is in a state of trance. Reversing these effects can only take years, causing dry spells in which the magician does not seem to succeed at any kind of magic at all, causing a sense of desperation that can easily take the upper hand of things. Strictly speaking, the sword should be used without physical contact before the operation, since it's also the embodiment of the intellectual capacity to make decisions, and the magician makes decisions to perform or not to perform a ritual. Only after carefully thinking about them beforehand, afterwards he or she acts uncompromisingly on the decision one has made. So hence the warning once again, since it cannot be often enough. The magician who never needs to use one sword is well off. This is the key point here I want to point out in this statement. As you've caught on, he basically tells you any ritual weapon is a tool. It's a focal point to help us reach the desired state in trance. It can be used for, as he said, abruptly ending a magical operation. But then again, what do we have that represents a sword? Our very own hand, our arm, all the in samurai teachings, all the sword is just an extension of your body. It's part of you. And that's where we need to kind of look at this in a sense for any magical tool we use. All they are is extensions of our body, a part of us. But yet we already have it. We have our arm, we have our hand. It is our natural sword. With this, we recognize how deep the symbolisms of ritual weapons go, and without wanting to exaggerate, it has hopefully become clear what we mean by saying the magician creates one's own universe. In doing so, it doesn't matter at all. He adapts a whole heap of symbolic material along the way, because the number one rule is always that each magician's individual system of symbols needs to be coherent. In other words, the symbol logic needs to be retained. That's why the relatively simple course system of symbols the beginner uses today is certainly much better than the blind imitations of some of the fancy techniques used in certain times. In any case, we need to give life to the symbols themselves if they're to be of any use, and by giving them the breath of life, we ourselves become gods. So as you can see, most people, like I said, you got to understand how he worded things and wrote things. But as a beginner, they serve a purpose. It teaches them how to, by creating them, putting the energy into them, how to use them. It helps. Basically, you're breathing in the breath of life. So there's nothing wrong with having those ritual tools. But knowing how not to have them, because like I said, hey, you could be driving along, and all of a sudden you just feel a need to do a ritual somewhere, and you just happen to pull over and get out, go in the middle of the woods somewhere. You don't have your ritual tools. But yet, hey, you can pick up a stick if you need a sword or a wand. But if you've done all the practice, the repetitions of making them, you don't need them. You already have them. So yes, better is the person who does not need them. They're just, just like our pets. They're just a quick focus point for whatever we give them power to be, whether it be protection. When by, depends on how you're past the beginner stage, you should be walking around in your own circle. It's called the walking circle for a reason. It's nothing but, so therefore, if you're doing that, you do not need to wear a pet. Your pet has no more meaning. Just like when we create seals. We should create our own. Because the truth is, anything we create is going to be something more powerful than we buy from someone else. It's like, somebody put it, every person that gets into the occult, they're looking for the perfect spell from a book. Well, guess what? You're never going to find the perfect written spell. It doesn't exist. Not until you write it and create it yourself. All the things you find in books are just examples. They're not going to work at 100%. You'd be lucky to get them to work at 25% of the actual power. Why? Because you didn't create it. It's somebody else's. But yet they make great ideas on how to create your own. Take the parts that, that you are drawn to, that speak to you. Because I'll tell you from personal experience, I've had some of my best tarot decks, rune stones, have been the ones I've made. The nice thing is, we can actually make that stuff fairly cheap now. Tarot cards are easy. Well, you gotta be, you gotta be a little creative. You don't have to necessarily draw nowadays. You can go on like DeviantArt and find stock images. That's free to use, no commercial, but just make sure you go to their page, check their licenses, make sure you can use it commercial free. Some of that stuff, hey, you can make your own, make a little money if you want to. It's a tool, though. Make one for yourself that's only going to be used by you. The easiest thing is to make rune stones. You can find stones anywhere and they're free. Preferably pick out the ones that you're drawn to, that seem to call to you. Those make the best ones. And believe it or not, you will, once you make them and start using them, you've already did all the ritual work. They're a part of you. You've created something and you've given them life. And like I said, don't get me wrong, I love my Thoth deck. But if I want precise, dead on, I will use my homemade deck. Just because it's a part of me. It accesses that faculty of mine that allows me to see and read divination, which is a natural part of me. I don't need the deck to do it, especially being an empath. I really don't need the deck to do it. See, that's the whole objective is, especially, then think of it this way. You spent all that time, that energy, crafting, creating, giving these tools life, meaning, purpose. You've done all the work that you've opened up those parts of you that you no longer actually need the physical tool. That's why I tell everybody, don't go, or if you're drawn to a blank book, you might need to create your own book of shadows. Not hard to do. That way, and every year when I get a new one, because I only do mine year by year, and they're more personal journals than anything, of just things I've got processed. But in the beginning of the books, all my stuff, the important stuff, my magical alphabet, some symbols that I use. I mean, you're creating stuff that you can pass down to students or your children, that they can learn. I don't really have to put spell work in there, but if I'm outlining a ritual, that's where it goes. You know, it's things we create. I mean, like I said, I'm going to do videos on creating your own alphabet and your own. I'll show you how easy creating tarot is, or room cards for those that prefer the cards or the stones. I prefer either or. They work the same for me. But the thing I love the most is the end result. If I do use them, I can feel them, and it's like you have a connection to them because you do. You gave them the breath of life. You created them, so they are a part of you. Which also allows you, no matter where they may be, just visualize them, and you will automatically open up that faculty that allows you to reach that state of gnosis you need to be in. See, a lot of us, we're taught imagery. We have to apply it. There's a reason for it, but there's also a reason why we create. You know, as far as, I'm not a big ceremonial robe fan. Kind of prefer the old practices, just because I understand that with certain types of fabrics, it should be used because it actually blocks energy. It's a buffer. So the closer you can get to your skin, the less restrictions you have. Same way with the tools. When you make them and create them, the less restrictions there are on them, the less obstacles they have to go through to do their purpose. You know, and they become sacred to you in a sense, because you're not going to let any old buddy touch your tools. I mean, just like a mechanic. Like, the one thing mechanics hate, other people using their tools. You know, we get caught up with stuff. I mean, another big one for me, people ask, oh, what magical alphabet do you use? Well, I mean, there's a bunch. But when it comes to doing my ritual work, sigil work, I use the alphabet that I created. That is mine. You know, it's always shared with a few people. And only a couple students of mine have my actual alphabet. Now, people that have done ritual work, it's my ritual, I grant them access to it. Because they got to be able to read it. You know, and that's the fun thing about creating your own. You know, a little creativity, you can create anything. You know, you don't have to be an artist. I'm just blessed that I am. But you don't have to be to create your own alphabet. And what you do, you decide what letters you're going to use, what language, and what alphabet, and you start giving it properties. What properties you want this letter to have as a symbol? What numeric value do you want to have it? By giving a numeric value, you're giving it a frequency. You know, as you're doing all this researching, you're charging it, you're starting the creation process. It will become one of your most powerful tools. And that's the important part. Anything you create for a tool it's going to be powerful. Might not be about as powerful as the next guy that makes his own, because he might have a little bit more knowledge in areas we don't. And don't be scared to, a few years, go over it, research, well, maybe I want to add this. It feels a little bit better, something don't feel right. Always. Then you create a whole new set. You know? And all you're doing, the more you do it, the more comfortable you get doing it. You're breaking, in a sense, you're starting to break the pattern of having to rely on that, because it becomes automatic. As soon as you enter that circle, it's like, okay, instantaneous. I don't need the tools. It's all there. I'm already open, fully open. It's as if I've done all that work, which is another reason why we teach the beginners about the properties, the aspects, why. And we teach them to create it. They're not going to understand it for quite some time, why they created it, but eventually they're going to get to the point, you're supposed to get to the point where you realize, oh, that's why I did that. That's what that was all about. I don't need this. It's going to take a little time to realize that. Even after you realize it, you're still going to want to reach for it. Or you're going to feel drawn to it. Why? Because you created it. But now you're starting to break down those barriers that allows you to reach the subconscious aspect of it, the consciousness, the intelligence, the properties, until eventually it comes pure action without a need for the tool. You are the tool. There's so many tools we use. Like I said, seagulls, that's the easiest way to learn how to create stuff. Create your own seagulls. Find an alphabet, or better yet, create your own. But if you're not at that stage yet, or you're still researching, learning how to do it, find another alphabet. Start playing with it, making your seagulls out of it. Because it teaches you how to use your own alphabet when it comes to making one. Just like when you create your tarot deck. Give it its own meaning, what it means to you. It goes back to seagull work. You take that tarot card you created, put it up on your ceiling, or put it, if you want to fit in one of the many positions, meditative positions, stick it in something, stare at it, focus on it, until it poofs out of existence. You don't longer see the card. And as you're in that meditation, focus on it. Listen to it. Afterwards, write down what you experienced, because that's what's going to become that card's property. The meaning of that card. Same way with the runes. Me personally, I don't create my own runes. I use the Elder Sarthak or some Viking runes. Those are what I'm drawn to. Never had the desire to ever change that. To this day. Something about that feels natural and pure to me. And that's the other thing. Something does feel natural and pure to you. Don't change it. Don't feel free to experiment in creating. Because there may be that off chance that what you created, you'll be more drawn to. Because you just gave something life. Which is, goes back to my previous discussion on silence. We're so misunderstood when we're not open about things, talking with other people in our communities. We forget that such knowledge is passed down through word of mouth, the vibrations that we speak. That radiate throughout our body, touches our souls, speaks to our souls. You know, just like magical words. Once you learn how to, you can start creating your own. Like I said, we have so many ritual tools at our disposal, we don't even realize it. You know, when to intone something, when not to. Some things aren't meant to be intoned like Enochian. It's not an intonable language, as I've come to learn. And trust me, Enochian, you know when you get it right. It will shake the very foundations. You will feel it. And that's with any magical word or God name, whatever you want to call them, words of power. You know when you get it right because you can feel it reverberating through the universe and back through you. That's how we test that. Just like I said, our pentacles, right? It's just another form of, most of us view our pens as protection. We feel it. Most Christians see us and hear it. They say, oh, you're a devil worshiper. That's evil. There's nothing evil about the pentacle. But it's just another focal point object. All our ritual tools are just focal pieces designed to help us reach certain states or trigger certain parts of the mind. I think those of you actually listen to my butchering and reading of The Magical Sword, now I think you start understanding what Aleister Crowley was saying. It becomes into more light, and that it can be done with any ritual tool we make or create. We give it its properties. We give it its energies. And as we're doing that, we're unlocking that part of our mind. And the knowledge that's there. Truthfully, that's all your tools are. They're just little keys dangling in front of you to open that door. Our Book of Shadows are meant to record our journeys throughout the year. I get lazy from time to time, don't even write in them. I don't really have the need for them. But when I do have something come to mind that I feel is important, it goes in there. When I'm doing my spell work or ritual work, it goes in there. And yes, for traditionally, I've gotten away from ritualistic magic as a practice because I realized I don't need all that stuff. I don't need to go through all those motions. I realize I can do it through my mind. I do not need to intone the words. Speak them, which thus my magic is done through silence. But there's times I feel the need to do that. We still got to listen to that inner voice. But at the same time, we got to, as we grow, we got to break away from the beginner tools. Start creating our own. That's what makes each magician unique. They create their own. We no longer use what we were given to us as teaching tools. We adapt. We make it our own. And that's what, the real teaching of what ritual tools are for. Teaching us how to make things our own. That's where true power comes from, guys. not the actual instrument. You are the instrument. Your mind. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like I said, I'm going to do 2 other videos separately. I'll post next week. They won't be live, they'll be recorded. So I can use XSplit to be able to show you my Photoshop as I just show you how to make an alphabet. Take you to a few places, how to do the research. Just remember, the tools, yes, they have a purpose for the beginner. But as you no longer become the beginner and you start learning, create your own. Free yourself. Like I said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Kind of a fun one for me. And if you like what I've been posting, guys, please subscribe. Click like, share these videos. Like I said, I don't have that many people following me. I'm not doing it for followers anyway, but it helps. The more followers I get, the more of my videos get shared to other people. More people I can start connecting with, talking to, sharing ideas with. In the end, this is what these videos are about. Making new connections, sharing ideas, learning things from you guys, as I hope you're learning from me. Like I said, my chats will be open. I don't think I have anybody in my chat room right now. Nope. But like I said, I'm going to start doing at the end of the videos or taking breaks in between videos once I start getting people following, watching them live, and actually letting you guys ask questions, answering them. Like I said, I got a bunch of things. Keep checking my channel. I'm going to have my live streams posted. Subscribe, click the little bell button so you can actually get notifications when I do go live or when I post videos. Which here lately I've been going live more than I've been posting because it's just easier to do it this way. But there's going to be some things where I want to work on and research as I'm going to make sure I get you the best information and I can show you the steps easier. But I hope you guys enjoyed. Hey, you guys have a good night or a good morning. And I should have a live stream tomorrow. I think I'm doing another one. Yes, tomorrow night I'm going to start the Paradigms of Magic before I get it back into the second part of Paths and Disciplines, the outline for a ritual part 2. Like I said, there's a few things that I've been working on researching, and I feel it's important to also cover the Paradigms of Magic before I get into the actual ritual working part of the second part. Other than that, good night, guys.